you look at the hard red winter wheat production region of the United States, which we are responsible for in Oklahoma, certainly you can see the green of the southern plains that make up hard red winter wheat production, the Pacific Northwest, the soft white wheats, the Durham wheats, and the hard red spring wheats in the Dakotas and Montana, and then the soft red winters in the Mississippi Delta. What's interesting about this chart is while it's predominantly green in the southern plains, you do see some of that hard white in the panhandle of Oklahoma and western Kansas and eastern Colorado. But we are seeing breeding programs look at trying to find different uses for different classes in their region. So for instance, we have some soft red winter lines that we're working on in the eastern part of Oklahoma to be utilized. And you're seeing these classes change to where in the Pacific Northwest now they are looking for ways to grow hard red winters, which they traditionally haven't done ever. So people are trying to find different uses for product in different ways to bring it to the table. You look at the Americas and the historical place in the world wheat market. In 1960, we had 70 to 80% of the global export market out of the United States. And you look at that number today in 2018 and you see, or 2019, and see that now we're maybe getting 30 to 35% of the market share at some times. So while this looks negative, we know that we have increased competition from Russia and Australia. It's not completely all terrible because the world population does continue to grow. We see in 2019 here that we have 7.6 billion people. The world population by 2050 is supposed to be 9.8 billion people. We see the African market right here in 2019 at 1.3 billion people. That population is going to double by 2050 to 2.6 billion people. And then you look at Latin America and you see us running around 625 million people. That number is going to increase by 2050 in that region to somewhere around 780 to 800 million people. So markets are going to exist in those other places that are Africa and Latin America, and we're going to continue to be working on product development for those countries as well. This is just a chart that shows commodity prices and the history of commodity prices starting back in 1805. But if you look at the top, we see price increase with the War of 1812. And basically this chart is just showing the K-wave cycles of every 55-year period where we had something significant happen in the economy that created food shortages. And so you fast forward here to 2015. We were coming out of a long-term drought and still in a long-term drought here in the United States, but globally in a long-term drought. And so from 2005 to 2015, we had great increase in the market. And of course, we lost it in 2015. The market bottomed out in 2016. I think we are seeing that trend move forward. But basically, this chart is implying if you look at our last event in 1975 as a Cold War, if you move forward to 2030, 2035, based on inflation being maybe under 15% a year, that we're going to see commodity prices triple from what they are today in that time. So we think that those opportunities, no doubt, are still going to exist for producers. It's just going to be different about how we get it into the marketplace. So if you look at food trends and keeping up with things in the future, the U.S. farmer continues to make increased investment in research for better technologies. Farmer investment continues to be of great importance. Specifically with the producer support through the Oklahoma Wheat Commission that makes the public research available at Oklahoma State University through our wheat breeding program. And I know several of you have heard this, but we are the only public research program besides UC Davis in California that has not created a large, have not created an agreement with a large multinational corporation. It's solely ran through the university. And so we feel that farmers should be proud about that in the state. And I think you're seeing it especially in their rapport that they have with us at the field days and learning about these new technologies. We also have public-private industry investments for variety development and breeding programs, increased competition for the best seed varieties and yield for end-use qualities, which we're going to be discussing a little bit later today. Decrease in acreage and competition from other crops continues to make this innovation extremely important. And so we also see continued research from companies like Syngenta, Bayer, Dow, DuPont, Lima Grain, and Pioneer Seeds, also looking for that increased race for genetics on seeds across the United States. The domestic users are also investing in in-use quality, and that benefits the buyers of U.S. wheat, but also benefits buyers globally around the world. So changing contract requirements. If you look at 30 years ago, if we were shipping wheat to Mexico, a number 2 hard red winter wheat was acceptable. They would accept 1% dockage, fully deductible, 79 kilograms per hectoliter, which comes out to around 61.9 pounds per bushel, 13.5 moisture maximum with an 11.5 protein minimum, and weights and grades were final at load. You'd put it on a boat and ship it, and there would be no problems. Moving to changing contract requirements of today, that number 2 hard red winter that was acceptable in that market now it has to be a number 1 hard red winter, 0.6 stockage all deductible instead of the 1%. We've increased our test weight 1 kilogram per hectoliter, which takes us to 62.7 pounds is what they're striving for. Now only want a 12.5 moisture maximum instead of the 13%, and a 12% protein minimum by sublot. So more testing on the shipments that are going over there in several places to meet that 12% rather than the 11, and also looking at an 8 to 10 minute stability for positive mixograph. And so I would say the commission is constantly sending testing and analysis on results that we get back from Great Plains Analytical Lab on end-use qualities to our buyers when they are reaching out to us. And they really look at, are these breads going to have the functionalities and capabilities to perform in the bakeries like they want? And so we look at consistency and functionality. They want better absorptions. They want better mixing and handling. They want better baking, a uniform product, consistency from batch to batch. And so this mixograph right here shows what would be completely unacceptable. And we do have those varieties that are out there that are unacceptable. They may even yield highly for agronomic traits, but they won't make a loaf of bread. If you get to 5 and 6, 5 would be considered outstanding, number 6 would be excellent. And as you can see with this dough properties and these characteristics here, you can kind of see a window in there where it's starting to break apart. This would probably rank as a 1 or 2 and not have good dough extensibility. So it would be not something that a baker would want. If you look at 9 ways millennials are changing the way we eat, I saw this article a few months ago in the Washington Post, and I thought it was interesting because how many of you in here, when you go out to eat now, maybe take a picture of your food on the dinner plate at a restaurant, or how many of you might cook a steak on the weekend and take a picture of what you grilled and put it on Facebook? Anybody? Any show of hands? Your wife would? Okay. So, but I saw 5 or 6, so it is interesting because the millennials are wanting to know more about where their product is coming from. And like it or not, change does create opportunity. The millennial, loosely defined as someone being born from the 1980s until about 2014, they are the largest age demographic in the U.S. currently. They are also now the largest age bracket in the workforce, and so their consumer choices do matter. They want truth from food manufacturers. They love customization. They want easy. They are redefining healthy, and they do value the planet. And so change creates opportunities. We see dynamics and market changes for higher protein wheat. Specifically, 2 years ago and the year before that, 2 and 3 years ago, when we had extremely low proteins in the marketplace, millers and bakers were trying to find where they could source that, and they were paying premiums for it. Do they exist in other places? Looking at maybe stone ground milling versus roller milling. It's not to say that one type of milling is better than the other, but we do know that we have several artisan bakers in Oklahoma City and Tulsa, as well as across the U.S. that are popping up, and they're actually using stone ground milling for their restaurants. And so today what we are going to be testing is actually stone grinded, and we do know that different flavor profiles do exist when you leave more of the bran and endosperm in that flour rather than just taking it out and then enriching it. And so we're seeing small-scale bakeries versus large-scale bakeries, more small-scale bakeries popping back up. We also see basis changes on a regional level from an elevator perspective in regards to millers and bakers reaching out to us. Certainly we've had 2 of the largest mills come to Oklahoma State University to meet with our lead wheat breeder looking at programs to where they can source the varieties that he is releasing, because they know that he has the milling and baking characteristics and properties that they want on a milling and bakery floor. And we saw the market react to this in certain parts of the U.S. 2 years ago when we had 1 or 2 varieties that didn't perform well that were planted in large areas. And so we know we have premiums for certain wheat varieties. I certainly think we're going to see more work being done on higher fiber wheats in the future. Graincraft has been reaching out to us about contracting for sustainable identity preserved wheat. And so I think that moving forward, we're going to maybe be looking at branding a program through OSU that are going to highlight the varieties that offer these millers and bakers what they're wanting. If you look at the future of flavor, this was in the International Food and Technology magazine a few months back, but a look at the 5 flavor trends that will resonate with consumers in the coming years and how technology is going to be helping companies take flavor to a whole new level. So you're going to see more alcohol infusion. You're going to see longer fermentation times and longer proofing times with bread. Actually, we're doing some studies right now on longer fermentation times, and can that be a way to help people who have gluten sensitivities be able to digest bread better by going through those longer fermentation times. You're going to see more herbs and spices being used from East Africa and southern India, as well as an increase in herbs and botanicals overall, and more use of maple and honey. And you can look at this plate up here. I don't know if it shows as well in the light. So, and we can laugh about it, but 25 years ago when I graduated Oklahoma State University and I went to downtown Oklahoma City, there was the Sheraton Hotel and there was one restaurant, the Spaghetti Warehouse. Now, today you go to downtown Oklahoma City and I would guess to say probably you could at least find 25 or 30 restaurants that would be serving a dinner plate like this. So I think our consumer preferences and choices are changing in the domestic market. And we see it too with people reaching out to us at the commission in the culinary world. We also are working on continuous improvement just with straw strength overall, stripe rust resistance, Western adaptation, wheat streak mosaic virus resistance, green bug resistance, and absolutely end-use qualities. I think moving forward, that's going to be where we take the future of the program at OSU. Also looking at building bridges and wheat breeding. So I know I listed those diseases, but taking unadapted germplasm with targeted traits from OSU and utilizing that and creating agreements with commercial variety seed companies that have larger targeted traits. And you're going to hear Dr. Manucherry talk about that today with the coaxium production system if you did not hear her talk about that earlier. But those opportunities are going to exist in those partnerships that give us more tools in the toolbox to fight weeds and disease resistance or have disease resistances out there in the field for producers. This is just kind of a snapshot of our public research program at Oklahoma State University. So from the time that the first cross begins to the time of final testing and a variety is made available to a producer, it takes anywhere from generally 11 to 12 years, but 2 years for that cross, 3 years for population development, 3 years for line selection, and 3 years for testing. Sometimes that testing, though, can go to 4 to 5 years if we've had harsh environments and different environments back to back, so we can be making more assessments on those varieties before they are released. This is just a picture of the plot replications at Lahoma Research Station. So this was actually taken back in 2016. We had 12,000 plot replications at that point in time that Dr. Carver was working on. And then we have discussion here with the hard white wheat. As you can see, it is alive and well in the program based on the agronomic traits. And so now between Lahoma and Chickasha and the Panhandle Research Station out at Goodwell, I think he's over 18,000 plot replications. So I don't know how he makes all those evaluations and gets it done before wheat harvest every year, but he's definitely not sleeping. If you look at the hard white wheat numbers from 2010 to 2018, we're kind of at that 14 to 17% of what we are looking at as far as the releases through OSU. But in 2019, 9 of the 38 advanced lines are on preliminary increase, so we know that 938 is certainly greater than 14 and 20%. And so that's basically showing us that disproportionately some of our best yielding material is actually coming from the hard white wheat, and so we know that the yield opportunities exist, but we still continue to work on the segregation with the elevator industry. But we do know also that there have been producers who do have on-farm storage that have taken those opportunities and have gotten premiums with it. Moving forward with golden grain, just some of the work that's being done on flavor profiles, which we're going to do today at the Food and Ag Product Center and the Oklahoma Wheat Commission Consumer Kitchen. So you see this golden grain right here. This is going to be the way that we're going to start branding our best quality wheats that the end user, the miller and baker, would be looking at. So this actually has 3.5 loaves. So if you get 5 loaves, which is what I probably should have up there, that means you've got the seal of approval. And I think you're going to see more of this being touted with maybe the hopes that we'll have something like a certified Angus beef program for the wheat industry in Oklahoma based on what we will be able to provide through varieties. Those are some other shots. Also, we are doing work with the Wheat Marketing Center in Portland, Oregon, which is the education and research bridge connecting growers and customers. So the Wheat Marketing Center is one of the technical crossroads of the international wheat industry, providing technical training and grower workshops, innovative research, product development, as well as crop quality testing services. And I think they have 6 cereal chemists and then several other technicians that are doing testings and evaluations. We have been doing some tortilla work with them as well as some pasta testing with them, and we've had some really good luck. So I had a miller from Louisiana call me who was looking at trying to find a way to source heirloom and ancient variety wheats because that's kind of the buzz. They say they have less glutenins in them and that they can be more digestible for people who have gluten sensitivities. But then he also said that he was reading about Oklahoma State University's research program and the work that Dr. Brett Carver was doing on end-use quality. And so they had a long conversation, and Dr. Carver said, well, we have research that's showing the opposite, actually, which some of those studies are going to be coming out in the next 6 months. But this miller decided to come to Oklahoma State University. They had their discussions, and then he basically told me that he would like to go on a food tour of Oklahoma City. It's really kind of crazy because I haven't been, I don't know, but Bon Appetit magazine, which is published in New York City, listed downtown Oklahoma City a restaurant called None Such to be the best restaurant in the United States. And I think they served 20 courses during that meal. So you have people wanting to come to Oklahoma City for like food and cuisine, and I'm like, I don't even go to these places. But he wanted me to put something together, and I found a pasta maker in Oklahoma City that I thought he might be interested in. And so we had those discussions with Chris Becker, and knowing that hard red winter wheat is not something that is used for a pasta, we were having discussions as, could it even be possible to do? And so based off of sensory evaluations at the Food and Ag Product Center and things we've been doing, we knew that Smith's Gold had a completely different flavor profile than anything we've ever tested before. I hope that you see that today. I think some of you will. Some of the people didn't catch it in the class before. But we knew that there was a smoothness to the texture even when you work with the dough properties. And so we decided to send it to the Wheat Marketing Center for testing. And so when they did their evaluations by professional taste testers for a whole grain pasta, they took this fresh noodle pasta and made out of Smith's Gold, and they compared it to Durham semolina blends as well as soft white wheats, which are traditionally used for pasta making, and it ranked higher than any of those other pastas on the testing. So the only hurdle or obstacle that we have to overcome is really the color, because if you ever had a whole grain pasta, a lot of times it's not really an enjoyable experience. I mean, I've bought some off of the supermarket shelf before. I've tried it. It's really bitter. It's really heavy tasting on your stomach, and a lot of people just try it once and never like it. So when you taste it today, keep in mind it is a whole grain pasta, that it is in a pasta salad. It's probably going to have a grainier taste, but if you cook it in certain ways in the kitchen, really that heaviness does not come out like it would in others. And so we're really kind of excited about that. This pasta maker has created a pasta line at Terra Pasta Company. And so this is some of his marketing, and you can purchase it online at delaterra.com, but it is made with the Smith's Gold variety. Also, we're doing work on tortilla development with the Wheat Marketing Center. This is just kind of something that, knowing as we try to gain market share in the Southern Plains and Central and Latin America, we haven't done a lot of work on tortilla development. We know that they're heavily utilized in this region. And so we sent these varieties to the Wheat Marketing Center, and I don't know, Smith's Gold was one of them, Double Stop was one of them, Gallagher, and then this 625, which is now been released, called a Skydance variety. We sent all that to the Wheat Marketing Center for them to do their testing and evaluations. And what was really interesting about it was, I called Jeff Wright up at Foundation Seed. I had him box all this stuff up for me. I sent it, and I was on the plane with Dr. Carver, and he was going over the data, and he goes, "Hey, Mike, did you ever think about testing the protein on what you sent to the Wheat Marketing Center?" And I said, "Well, no, why?" And he's like, "Mike," he's like, "you've got a 10-4 protein, 11-2 protein, and 11 protein." He's like, "What were you thinking?" So I was like, "Oh, this is not going to be good." But lo and behold, they did the testing and evaluations, and we actually had better stability times than we ever have had on a lot of these wheat varieties. And so, like, we're talking 12.3, 8.2 is acceptable by industry standards, but there was one here that was 20.3, which was the Smith's Gold. Also, the Skydance, a 25-minute stability, which is completely crazy. Would not think that it would make a good tortilla, but would make an excellent loaf of bread. And they put it in the tortilla press and in the tortilla lines. And so we're going to have further evaluation, but this 625 Skydance variety, as you can see, makes a perfect ball in the press. Made beautiful balls. This was the Double Stop CL Plus variety. Looking at that, you just know it's not going to make a good tortilla. And basically when they're coming out on the tortilla press, there you can see the 625 conventional made a beautiful tortilla. This was the Double Stop. As you can see, it's peeling off on the ends, has breaks. It also has air bubbles in the center. And then also there was an organic line of the 625 because we know it has a disease package for organic. If anybody was interested in growing organic, we were just seeing if we could find some market opportunities. What was interesting about this is that it all held together really well too. So we have a tortilla maker in Plainview, Texas that is looking at working with us on research to capitalize maybe on some of these quality uses. And actually the 625 variety is going to be geared for Southwest Oklahoma, and the name of it is Skydance. This is just a picture kind of the grain sheds where we do the testing and evaluation after harvest each year. I do have some books on the milling and baking qualities where these evaluations are made out at the booth. So if you want some of that information, it goes into greater detail. This just kind of talks about our test weight distributions from 2018 harvest. You had certainly higher test weights. So the 78.9 or the 79 probably is like a 62-pound test weight. I probably should have done the numbers. I'm sorry I had it in kilograms per hectoliters. But we had 61 to 62-pound test weights overall in our region, and you see that being represented here, whereas back in 2015 where we had lower test weights, you can see that representation here. But looking at the lower test weights, even that 77.3 was much lower in the Southern Plains. And so I was just trying to show that there certainly are differences, and there's also correlations with how the market reacts to that. And then also on the protein distribution, so looking here, everything at 12% or higher, so we have like 82% of the market share in 2018. And then if you look back here in 2017, basically 80% of the market or over is at 11 or lower. And the market reacted to that this year. Right now, I think we're trading at $1 higher than what we were last year based on protein. Certainly, there was hope that maybe the price would be higher at this point in time due to some crop failures in Russia. I think we're still going to have to wait and see on that. And I think it's going to be interesting going into this next crop season to see what kind of qualities we're going to have based on the late plantings of wheat and the crop really never suffering ever since it's been planted. It's basically been in water. So it's going to be interesting to see where we go. This is just some of the trade delegations that we've hosted at the Oklahoma Wheat Commission and throughout the state when we bring our international buyers in. We had flour millers of Nigeria here last year, as well as Grupo Trimex flour mills in Mexico, which is the largest mill in Mexico. They do a lot of work for Grupo Bimbo. And on the sign-up sheet for the electronic newsletter, this is our quarterly publication. So if you're on that, you'll start getting that. But we also have several resources outside at our booth if you'd like to walk by and see those. I know it sounds crazy because when Dr. Carver wanted us to start working on this, I was like, well, this is crazy. All flour and all bread taste the same. I think you'll find that there certainly are differences out there based on variety. I don't know that we're going to become like wine growers in California, but we do think that there are certain niche markets based on what the flavor profiles offer.